The sizzle of hot dogs on the grill had replaced the precise orchestration of a five-star kitchen 25 years ago, but Chef Antoine Dubois still approached every streetcar order with the exacting standards and culinary artistry that had once earned him 3 Michelin stars and recognition as one of the world's greatest chefs. Tony, 68, sat in the fifth row of the Tonight Show studio, his chef's trained palate automatically analyzing flavors and aromas while his master's hands moved in unconscious knife-work motions on his lap. The small Tony's Dog's 25 years NYC street food patch on his modest jacket caught the studio lights as he adjusted his position with the precise movements of someone who has spent decades creating culinary perfection under intense pressure. To the thousands of customers who had bought hot dogs from Tony's cart over 2.5 decades, he was just another reliable street vendor who somehow made the best hot dogs in Manhattan and had an unusual ability to elevate simple street food into something special. What they didn't know was that their $3.00 hot dogs were being prepared by a man who had once commanded $500.00 per person tasting menus and whose innovative cuisine had influenced restaurants around the world. What Tony didn't know was that his story had been quietly circulating among culinary professionals after a food blogger had posted about the hot dog vendor whose technique suggests serious classical training. The post had caught the attention of celebrity chefs who recognized the knife skills, ingredient selection, and presentation standards being applied to street food by someone they suspected might have fine dining experience. Tony's story had begun in the prestigious kitchens of France, where young cooks were forged into culinary artists through years of rigorous training under master chefs who tolerated nothing less than perfection. Born in Lyon to parents who ran a small bistro, Tony had shown exceptional palate sensitivity and culinary creativity from childhood, earning apprenticeships with legendary chefs and eventually opening his own restaurant that redefined modern French cuisine. After training under Michelin-starred chefs in Lyon and Paris, Tony had opened Le Jardin Noir in Manhattan in 1985, bringing revolutionary techniques that combined classical French foundations with molecular gastronomy innovations that were decades ahead of their time. His restaurant had quickly earned critical acclaim, 3 Michelin stars, and a waiting list that extended 6 months for reservations that cost more than most people's weekly salary. Over 15 years, Chef Antoine Dubois had become one of the most respected figures in international cuisine. He'd pioneered techniques in molecular gastronomy, created dishes that food critics call edible art, and influenced a generation of chefs who studied his innovations in flavor combinations, presentation, and the scientific approach to cooking that elevated cuisine from craft to art form. But the restaurant industry had proven financially precarious even for the most successful establishments. The 1998 economic downturn, combined with changing dining preferences and the enormous overhead costs of maintaining Michelin star standards, had forced Le Jardin Noir into bankruptcy. Tony, despite his culinary genius, had lost everything: his restaurant, his reputation, and his life savings when creditors seized his assets and his investors abandoned the project. The hot dog cart had been purchased in 1999 with borrowed money as the only way Tony could continue working with food while rebuilding his life from nothing. But 25 years later, he discovered unexpected satisfaction in bringing culinary excellence to street food, proving that great cooking wasn't about expensive ingredients or elaborate presentations. It was about understanding flavors, respecting ingredients, and creating satisfaction for people who needed good food at affordable prices. The Tonight Show tickets had been a surprise gift from Tony's regular customers, office workers, construction crews, and tourists who had become loyal followers of the vendor who somehow made street food that tasted better than restaurant meals and always remembered their preferences. It was a Monday night taping in April, and Jimmy was in good spirits after interviewing a celebrity chef about his new cookbook. During his commercial break interaction with the audience, his attention was drawn to Tony by his obvious sophistication and the way he examined the studio's catering setup with professional culinary knowledge. Sir, you're looking at our food service like someone who really understands professional cooking. Are you in the restaurant business? Tony straightened with the practiced posture of someone who has spent decades commanding professional kitchens under intense pressure. Hot dog vendor, sir. I operate a street cart in Manhattan. Been serving New Yorkers for 25 years. A warm murmur went through the nearby audience members. Street food vendors were essential parts of New York's culinary landscape, and 25 years of feeding the city deserve recognition. 25 years of street food? You must know every secret to making great hot dogs. Tony's face lit up with genuine passion for cooking, even at its simplest level. Good food is about understanding your ingredients, respecting the cooking process, and caring about the people you're feeding. Whether you're making hot dogs or more elaborate dishes, the principles of good cooking are the same. You talk about cooking principles like someone with formal culinary training, very sophisticated understanding of food preparation, but cooking is cooking. You learn to taste, to understand how flavors work together, how to prepare ingredients properly. Good technique applies whether you're working with simple ingredients or complex preparations. Emmy noticed something in Tony's language, a culinary sophistication that suggested serious professional training beyond typical street food experience. Tony, have you always worked in street food? You seem to have restaurant level knowledge about cooking. Tony paused, as if deciding how much of his background to reveal. Actually, I used to work in fine dining before I started the hot dog cart. Restaurant cooking, classical French cuisine. That was that was a different life. The mention of fine dining and classical French cuisine caught the audience's attention immediately. French culinary training was among the most prestigious and demanding in the world. You cook French cuisine? Tony, that's serious culinary training. What kind of restaurant did you work in? I owned a restaurant in Manhattan, Jardin Noir. We focused on innovative French cuisine, molecular gastronomy techniques, that type of cooking. It was successful for a while. Jimmy's curiosity was immediately piqued. Molecular gastronomy and innovative French cuisine suggested high-end dining that was worlds away from street food, and someone with that background selling hot dogs suggested a dramatic story. Jimmy made a decision that would change everything. Tony, French molecular gastronomy is elite culinary artistry. Would you mind coming down here and telling us about your restaurant? Tony looked uncertain. Oh, I don't think people want to hear about old fine dining stories. That world is very different from popular food. Trust me, people definitely want to hear about haute cuisine from someone who lived it. Come on down. As Tony made his way to the stage with the controlled movement of someone who had once moved through high-pressure professional kitchens, his bearing transformed completely. The confident presence of someone who had once been considered among the world's greatest chefs. When he reached the stage, Jimmy guided him to a comfortable chair. Ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy announced, this is Tony Dubois. For 25 years, he's been serving hot dogs from his street cart, but before that, he was Chef Antoine Dubois, owner of Le Jardin Noir restaurant. Tony, tell us about your fine dining career. Tony settled into the chair, and when he spoke about cuisine, his voice took on the passion and precision of someone who had mastered one of humanity's most demanding art forms. The Jardin Noir was about pushing the boundaries of what restaurant cuisine could achieve. We combined classical French techniques with molecular gastronomy, using science to understand how flavors work, how textures can be transformed, how presentation can enhance the dining experience. The audience was completely quiet, understanding they were hearing about culinary artistry from someone who had practiced it at the highest levels. What was molecular gastronomy like in the 1980s and 90s? Tony's eyes lit up with memories of culinary innovation that had been decades ahead of its time. We were pioneers in using scientific techniques to create new textures and flavor combinations. Spherification that turned liquids into caviar-like spheres, liquid nitrogen to create instant ice creams, foams and gels that concentrated flavors in ways that had never been possible. What was your signature dish? We constructed bouillabaisse. We separated all the traditional elements of the classic fish stew and presented them as distinct components that recreated the complete flavor when eaten together. The fish was prepared using sous vide. The broth was transformed into an edible gel. The saffron was presented as an aromatic foam. Jimmy reached behind his chair and pulled out a tablet loaded with restaurant industry, databases, and culinary history. Tony, we did some research before tonight's show. He showed Tony Archives restaurant reviews and culinary awards. According to Michelin Guide records, Le Jardin Noir earned 3 Michelin stars and was called revolutionary by food critics. Tony looked stunned. You found reviews of my restaurant? We did. Listen to this from a 1995 New York Times review. Chef Dubois has created something unprecedented, a restaurant that combines scientific precision with culinary artistry to produce dishes that challenge every assumption about what food can be. This is the future of fine dining. The studio fell completely silent. The audience was processing that they were meeting someone who had been recognized as one of the world's greatest chefs. Tony, 3 Michelin stars put you among the elite chefs in the world. What happened to Le Jardin Noir? Tony's expression grew more somber, touching on the harsh economics that could destroy even the most successful restaurants. The 1998 economic downturn, combined with the enormous overhead costs of maintaining Michelin standards, forced us into bankruptcy. Fine dining is incredibly expensive to operate. The ingredients, the staff, the equipment, the rent. When reservations dropped even slightly, we couldn't sustain the business. That must have been devastating after building something so successful. It was like losing my identity. I had dedicated my entire adult life to creating culinary art, and suddenly I had no kitchen, no staff, no way to continue practicing at that level. Jimmy leaned forward. You never stopped being a chef, did you? Tony smiled for the first time since taking the stage. Cooking is in your blood forever. Even making hot dogs, I apply the same principles: quality ingredients, proper technique, attention to detail. My hot dogs use natural casings, carefully seasoned meat, house made condiments. It's still cooking, just at a different scale. Jimmy continued reading from the tablet. Tony, we found something else. Several celebrity chefs have been trying to locate you to collaborate on projects celebrating street food artistry. Celebrity chefs want to work with me? Listen to this from Daniel Boulud. Antoine Dubois was one of the most innovative chefs of his generation. His combination of classical technique and scientific innovation influenced countless chefs. His approach to elevating simple ingredients would be invaluable for modern cuisine. Jimmy stood and addressed the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, this man spent 15 years creating some of the most innovative cuisine in the world, then spent 25 years applying that same culinary excellence to feeding New Yorkers from a hot dog cart. He turned back to Tony. The culinary world wants to honor you. The James Beard Foundation wants to give you their Lifetime Achievement Award, and several restaurants want to collaborate with you on projects that bridge fine dining and street food. Tony's eyes filled with tears. They want to honor my cooking? They do. And Tony, there's something else. Culinary schools are teaching your molecular gastronomy techniques as foundational methods in modern cuisine. Jimmy had one more surprise. We have someone here who wanted to meet you. From backstage, Thomas Keller, the legendary chef behind the French Laundry and Per Se, appeared carrying a chef's knife and a white chef's coat. Antoine, Keller said, approaching with obvious respect, I've been studying your innovation since the 1990s. Your work at Le Jardin Noir pushed the boundaries of what restaurant cuisine could achieve. You were decades ahead of your time in understanding the science of cooking. Tony was openly crying now, overwhelmed by recognition from one of the most respected chefs in the world. Hey, Chef Keller, you know my work? Every serious chef knows, Antoine Dubois. Your techniques and innovations are still used in top kitchens around the world. You proved that fine dining could be both artistically beautiful and scientifically precise. Jimmy sat back down beside Tony. Tony, you spent 25 years thinking your fine dining career was over, but what you really did was continue practicing culinary excellence while your innovations continued influencing how the world's best chefs approach cooking. As they helped Tony back to his seat, he stopped and looked out at the audience one more time. Thank you for honoring my work, but I want young cooks to know great cooking isn't about expensive ingredients or fancy equipment. It's about understanding flavors, respecting your ingredients, and caring about the people you're feeding. Whether you're making hot dogs or haute cuisine, cook with passion and integrity. The episode that aired became one of the most inspiring Tonight Show segments ever, sparking conversations about culinary artistry and the chefs who continued perfecting their craft regardless of circumstances. Tony's story inspires several major restaurants to seek out displaced fine dining chefs for consulting and collaboration projects, recognizing that their expertise was invaluable regardless of their current circumstances. His hot dog cart became a pilgrimage site for food enthusiasts who wanted to taste Michelin-level technique applied to street food. Tony spent his retirement consulting on restaurant projects that elevated casual dining while continuing to operate his hot dog cart part time, discovering that leaving fine dining hadn't ended his culinary career, it had expanded his understanding of how great cooking could serve everyone. At 70, Tony still prepares every hot dog with a chef's attention to perfection, still believes that all food deserves to be prepared with skill and care, and still carries his chef's knife alongside his street vendor license, a reminder that true chefs never stop cooking, they just find new kitchens where their passion can serve people who need great food, one perfectly prepared meal at a time. Because sometimes the most important restaurants aren't the ones with Michelin stars, but the humble carts where master chefs continue proving that culinary excellence isn't about prestige. It's about bringing joy and satisfaction to everyone who's hungry for something made with skill, passion, and love.